first rule of Fight Club is you do not talk about Fight Club.
Hello, and welcome to Cinema Craptaculus, where we say a bad movie is just as hard to make as a good one, just a lot easier to make fun of. This is Stephanie, and with me are my uncrafty co-hosts,
John,
Dave,
and Steve.
And we welcome our special guest, Adrienne Wilkinson.
Yay! Thank you guys for having me. I'm excited to see what craziness I'm about to get into.
Well, just based on how long it took us to get this going.
Do we say your name right?
You did, actually, yes. Three
Which
times.
means, did Stephanie say your name right?
Why are you blaming me?
Did the Mind Hive say your name right?
Thank God they did, and I am grateful for all of you.
What we like to do when we have a new special guest is learn a little bit about them. So, Adrienne, I know a lot about you. So here's a couple random things that I'm going to ask you, and you can just tell us away what you think. You have done a lot of TV and film. Tell us where you started.
Where I actually started, my very first job was on Sweet Valley High.
What?
Yes.
Who did you play?
Just some random cheerleader that had some crush on some random football player.
Awesome.
I remember that storyline.
I had just turned 18.
Nice.
Yeah,
Was the storyline based on a novel?
Probably, yeah. I only do very literary material. I have incredibly high standards, exactly. Which is why my second job was a guest spot on Saved by the Bell.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so I rolled deep. Yeah.
Did you kiss H.A. Slater?
I did not, but I was.
Sorry.
I can't
Wait,
remember.
original or new
No,
class?
I was in the new class. And I can't remember who we had a crush on, but some dude on there, he was dating three of us at the same time. And at the school dance, we all found out that bastard.
You spent some time in New Zealand.
I did. My for real start was that I played Xena's daughter on Xena Warrior Princess.
I will tell you about my mother. And you little If my mother is with Aries, you can bet she's got a pretty good reason.
So, whoop, whoop, shout out to ancient Rome and inaccurate history.
That's my favorite history.
How old were you when you did Xena?
I booked the job when I was 20. So, yeah, 20 turning 21. Yeah.
And you moved to New Zealand to do this?
I moved back and forth. The way that show shot, they would film for 3 months and have a month off, and film for 3 months and have a month off. So I was there about 18 months over the course of 2 years or something like that, but never longer than 3 months at a time.
Were you by yourself, or did family go with you?
Every trip, someone came with me, but usually just for like a week.
What was your postal code?
No, I think that's fascinating to be that young and be across the world like that.
I did a lot of stuff when I was young that I had no idea was a big, brave deal. And now I think, how the F did I do that? Like, because I was so excited. I mean, I'd never been out of the country, and then I'm in New Zealand working, and it was crazy pants and the most extraordinary adventure to this day that I've ever had. It was just magic every freaking day.
Did that show in its filming cross over with any of Peter Jackson's stuff?
Right as our show ended, almost all of our entire crew moved over to start filming the Hobbit movies or the Lord of the Rings movies.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Knew they looked familiar.
Exactly.
So let's move to almost the present here. You are the star of a Star Trek.
I am the lead of an independent Star Trek film.
I was at the premiere of the first movie.
Yes.
And it was very impressive.
Well, I have to say, I have such a huge place in my heart with it. And what it actually was the first attempt at a new CBS Star Trek series. So,
nice.
We filmed it. It was in consideration. And in the end, they loved our idea, but it made more sense for them to start with their own fresh idea, which is how we have the new Star Trek now.
Battle stations. Damn you, Tuvok. I could have eaten 2 meals tomorrow with my winnings.
We have urgent matters to discuss.
We have nothing to discuss.
So, 3 cheers for continuing the Star Trek fandom. So, yeah, I'm happy I got to play my little part. And it was a cool role. I got to play a captain, which was pretty awesome.
Oh, good.
Of a starship.
Yes. I was the captain of a Black Ops team. So it was sort of like a dark version of Star Trek. I was technically working for good, but I was allowed to do bad things to accomplish my mission. So it was fun.
That sounds like you did.
I do have a license to ill.
Okay, wow. You make me sick. I highly recommend, if you have not done so yet, is to go on social media, especially Instagram, and follow Adrienne. Where do we follow you on Instagram?
Yo, Adrienne. Basically, if you Google that, you'll find all my stuff. It's at yo_Adrienne W, technically.
And she is like in a world of darkness on social media. She's like the bright light spot. Everything is like, I love her posts because it's just like, it's just, oh, the world's coming to an end, the world's coming to an end. And then she has the best posts.
Ray of sunshine.
Yes.
Oh my God. I appreciate that, but I definitely only want to put good stuff out into the world. It can also be hilarious or awkward or entertaining in some other way, but it just can't be dark and sad because I can't deal.
Where can we find the Star Trek film? Is there a place you... And do you mind...
No, that's cool.
Okay,
Basically,
okay.
if you just look it up on YouTube, you'll find it everywhere. Technically, it has its own website. It's Star Trek Renegades, but if you look on YouTube, it's all over YouTube, so you can find it there.
It's all over you, too.
Unfortunately, it always will be.
We are so thankful you're here and enjoying our company.
Oh my God, you guys are the best. It's
Lies.
been,
She's a really good
you're
actress.
also the worst, but
Yeah.
you're also the best.
You know, a bad podcast is just as hard to
Okay,
make as a...
moving on.
So this year is the 20th anniversary of the movies from the year 1999. Can you guys believe it?
Can't.
I think that's how math works.
So in honor of that, we've chosen 4 of the biggest movies from that class to talk about their impact 20 years later. Also, we just wanted to party like it's 1999! One more time! One more time!
I feel like I need to get my choker and my combat boots and like a floral dress.
Like the pencil skirt, like what is it, those like long like cargo skirts?
Yes, with the
Yeah.
pockets.
And you guys should get the Jennifer haircuts. The Rachel haircuts.
Rachel.
Yes, the Rachel.
It's like the millennium. We gotta have streaks in it.
Doc Martens and frosted tips for
That's
the
it,
dudes.
exactly.
Nice.
So should we do the rapid recap?
Rapid recap!
It's 1999, and the face of cinema is about to change forever. The Matrix had you knowing Kung Fu. American Beauty subversively told the story of the future. Blair Witch Project, Blair Witch Devil Wears Prada, was a mashup. Blair Witch Project had us believing in the supernatural and blowing snot bubbles while crying, and everyone was talking about Fight Club. I just want to say real quick, how did we come upon these films? Just
I think, like, truthfully, Googled, and then it's like, I remember that one. I remember that one. I remember that one. I remember that one.
well, we're talking about big box office films.
Yeah.
There's a lot of
Office
small
Space.
films.
Office Space.
Yeah.
Office Space. And I think these 4 kind of are 4 films that kind of made a big change in the industry.
They're very
influenced
influential.
influenced the
Definitely.
industry and have long-lasting impact, whether for good or bad or neutral reasons.
Well, we should start with The Matrix because I believe, is it next month is the actual 20th anniversary? Was it April?
April.
What is The Matrix? The Matrix is a computer-generated dream world.
What's funny is when the film came out, it got criticized because people felt that it had just taken so many elements from other films like Blade Runner and Terminator and was just basically a copycat. And in the 20 years since, so many films have stolen from The Matrix.
Right. Well, that's interesting that you say that it's like the criticism that people had was that it copied other things. Where I came from, it was like nothing I had ever seen before. I was in high school, and I remember people were talking about it, and I was like, I guess I'll check out this movie. I saw a trailer for it, and I was like, Keanu Reeves in another action movie? Okay, that's fine. Because at the time, he wasn't in good action movies. But, I finally saw it that summer, and I was blown away. I was like, this is like nothing I've seen.
Was he pre-Speed or post-Speed?
Post-Speed, but
94.
it was that lag in between Speed 1.
And he turned down Speed 2, and that was kind of a smart move.
Yeah, Jason Patrick was in that one. But it was when he was in Johnny Mnemonic and what is that? Chain Reaction, stuff like that, where it was like forgettable action movies.
Sure.
He had been in The Devil's Advocate though.
Adrienne, were you in New Zealand when this came out?
Not exactly. I might have been back and forth, but I was definitely here in California when I saw it. And I kind of only saw it once in the theaters and then caught glimpses of it over the years. And then this week I also rewatched it. And I have to say my big takeaway, and this is not to give props to all the awesome stuff in the movie, but my biggest takeaway rewatching it was that bald Keanu Reeves is not the Keanu Reeves for me. It just wigged me out with him and that
Just
plugged into all that stuff. Like, yeah,
And
I
the
was
gelatin
like,
all around.
Yeah, I was
You know,
so
when he
grossed
gets
out.
unplugged, did you happen to notice that, like, he goes cross-eyed before he gets flushed, and it looks so cartoony ridiculous, like right out of a Looney Tunes movie. It's just so ridiculous.
It's weird. I feel like filming that must have been super gross and awful.
Yes.
Well, I don't know that Keanu really even knew what was going on because I always just figured
Yeah.
like he seems like that type of guy who just shows like, oh, what are you gonna do? Where do I stand?
Right.
What's
right.
my line again? Okay, like he's like just sort of like medicated, maybe on a little too much Advil.
He's like the real-life version of, what was the Peter Sellers film, Being There? That's
Yeah.
just him.
Right.
Yeah.
Whoa, I'm a movie star.
Yeah, whoa.
You know, the film is interesting just to watch now because I always look at films that are older as to see what anachronisms are there. And, you know, the first thing that pops out is like lack of cell phone or cell phone that's old.
Yes.
And it's got flip phones. But other than that, it holds up because it's supposed to be a future view of 1999 because the film actually takes place in what, like the year 2100 or something?
Yeah, like it's way in the
And
future.
the Matrix
Wait, really?
mainframe, yeah, the software recreates 1999 for whatever reason.
Oh, because of that.
I couldn't
Okay.
tell if you were serious. You're like,
I was like,
what?
no, it's 1990. Well, you know, the other thing I always thought, I never gave it much thought at the timeline of the reality versus the Matrix, but I always thought that it was 1999 in reality as well as the Matrix. It's just that, like, maybe in the 1900s, the aliens came and started diverging.
That sounds crazy.
Yeah, that's
You're crazy.
No, saying it out loud right now, I agree. It sounds crazy and dumb. And I'll go stand in the corner now. And
You
be
go think
silent
about
until
what
we
you
talk about
said.
Blair Witch Project.
Here's my issue that I've always had with the movie. Back when I saw it then and when I saw it again, I watched it a week ago like you did because I was catching up, just make sure I knew what I was talking about.
Steve was really high in the 90s. Go ahead.
Actually, I wasn't. I was such a good boy. I was 6 years old. You were in high school.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right.
There was a Dr. Seuss version of it I saw.
He snuck in with his older brother.
If the only way you can travel in and out and be escaped is the cell phones, is the phone or the pay phone,
Yes.
then why did the computer system and or the aliens
Shut
shut down the phone system
Yep.
or give a reason why
They
communication? But why communication? Maybe change the communication to a
In
different phone.
1999,
You know what I'm talking about?
I
inexplicably have to write letters.
That's amazing.
You know what I'm saying? I always thought about, like, what if they were like, oh, no one advanced this other way of communicating, and they got rid of it because,
Yeah.
that's what I thought. It's like, well, if you don't want people to be able to get out of the Matrix, just get rid of the fucking phone.
It's also how they capture people, though. So they leave it running because while yes, our intrepid rebels can use it as a means to get in and out, it's also how they can find those people, right?
Right.
So
Yes.
I will say, I think that's an amazing observation. I never thought about that before. And what I find funny now, though, is that it has that, like, AOL dial-up tone.
Yeah.
Yes. Dial-up.
It's like Keanu was faxed out of the Matrix.
But I was okay with it because today, watching it now, it kind of made sense because
Yes.
the world came to an end. And they had to work with what they had in the time period they had. So
Right,
it was
yeah.
okay that they were using almost archaic instruments, taped
Yes.
together and all that kind of stuff. So I was like, okay, they got to a point and they had to survive, but they're not, computer MIT geniuses who could advance the system.
Right.
Right.
But that was something I always thought. I was like, we'll just get rid of the phone books.
Well, if
Come on,
only you
super
and Neo. Like, I figure you could somehow figure this out.
This is me doing Neo's karate.
Right.
I love when he stands there and does the karate like that. It's just like, and I wanted to get a soda, pizza, do a crossword.
So the Wachowskis were coming off of a film that had gotten some good notices, but wasn't a big hit, and that was the one with Gina Gershon and Meg Tilly, Jennifer Tilly, and I forgot who the guy was, but it was
Joey Pants.
It was
What was
Pantoliano,
Mm-hmm.
and what was the film called?
Bound.
So
Bound.
when you think about the leap of faith
Bound.
that the studio had to give this type of project to guys coming who were fairly unknown, who'd come off that film, that was impressive. I don't know if we'd see that now.
Ooh.
I
I feel like
thought the Russo brothers were like that, right?
No, but they're hiring them to come into an existing franchise that let's face it, Marvel controls a lot. They don't get auteurs. But Warner back then, and I guess movie companies back then, could take small guys and give them a lot of money.
Now that's transferred over to TV.
I think I'll put it this way. I loved The Matrix until about 20 minutes into The Matrix 2. And then I was like,
Correct.
somehow this all sucks now.
Yes. Correct. I didn't want to bring it up. I didn't want to bring up sequels.
The
But
naked
you gotta talk about it.
No.
Where are we doing this?
No, we're going to move on to the Blair Witch Project, which is the next on our list.
I have a question though. Can
Yeah.
we move on to Fight Club? Because I think there's a connection between
Okay, it's so funny because I was going to say there's a connection with all these movies, but we're going to
Oh.
let's do
They
that
all
then.
came out
Let's-
in 1999.
That's good. So we'll leave the horror film American Beauty at the end.
Great.
Love it.
So we're going to move on now to Fight Club.
I want you to hit me as hard as you can. How much can you know about yourself? You've never been in a fight. I don't want to die without any scars.
Yes.
Stephanie.
Yeah, the reason why I would love to talk about Fight Club, even though you're not supposed to talk about Fight Club, is because this and The Matrix sort of presented, in my view, and a lot of people's view, like this sort of futurism, like this sort of like apocalyptic vision at the end of the century. Everybody was thinking that Y2K was happening, everything's going to explode, and whether it's brought on by, well, it was going to be brought on by us no matter what, whether we created machines that do it or we do it to ourselves by, I guess, disenfranchising white men.
Well, it was
Why
definitely.
are you staring at me like that?
I guess he's not looking at me.
There's
But
two
it-
white men here.
I'm not like,
There's no truer white men. Is that what you said?
No, I said there.
there's no churro white men?
That's true. Okay.
No churro.
Both films are these sort of not tributes, but these weird fantasies for emasculated Gen X males raised by single mothers.
We're a generation of men raised by women.
And they even mention that in Fight Club. But they're both fantasies about about somebody being someone cooler in a different reality. And in the case of Fight Club, it's the narrator conjures this alter ego who, what does he say?
I look like you want to look. I fuck like you want to fuck. I am smart, capable, and most importantly, I'm free in all the ways that you are not.
But that's essentially Neo.
Yeah, it's
Yes.
true. He was great in The Matrix. I mean, like, what's his name? Mr. Anderson could become.
And right, he's bald and unattractive in real life.
See, there you go.
Yeah.
No, I do think it's a lot about masculinity for sure. I think there's all sorts of exploring going on right there. But my takeaway I have two takeaways from Fight Club. One is the fact that in real life, Brad Pitt had a dentist chip his tooth in half for realism for the movie.
Is that real?
That's real, which I
Jesus.
think is crazy.
Oh my God.
But when you have lots of money, you can do crazy things.
Sure.
And just be like, yes, take out my tooth.
And it's funny you say that because when he's talking to the guys, he's like, we were all promised that we were going to be rock stars and movie gods, and we're not. We're very angry about that. And just the dripping irony of
Yeah,
this
that's right.
amazingly
Okay.
fit rock star / movie god in
Yes.
front of all these extras who are going,
Yeah, completely. It is.
And what's your
It's
second
awful.
thing?
Oh, okay. So my second thing is even back then when I was way too young to have really registered that's not. Okay, so it's one of my favorite movie lines that's ever existed, but it was one of my favorite movie lines even then, but sort of inappropriate. And I'm probably going to not get it exactly right, but it's something like, Marla was the kind of woman who would go, Marla was a woman like the cut on the roof of your mouth, who would go away if you'd stop tonguing her.
That's pretty much it.
I burst out laughing in the theater. I was like, oh my God, did they just say that? But to
Great.
this day, I think that's
great.
hilarious.
Some great lines in that movie. Do you remember her line and the shit that would come out of this woman? And then remember what she
Yes.
says? What do you want to say it?
No.
No, I shouldn't say it. Anybody? Do you know the line, Steve?
My God. I haven't been fucked like that since grade school.
Yes.
Oh,
And Brad Pitt's little reaction, but the original line was way worse, and the studio
Really?
had it changed. She turns to him and says, "I want to have your abortion."
you're making this shit up.
No, that's true.
John doesn't make shit like that up.
It's true. And I think that line came from the original Chuck Palahniuk book.
Say that again for me.
I can't-
Wait. As long as we're talking about lines, if you don't mind me.
Please.
Because the one line, the most famous line, and first of all, watching it this past 2 weeks, whenever I watched it, was the first time I saw it.
What?
Really?
Yeah, seriously. I just wasn't very interested in it. And about the toxic
Masculinity.
Thank you.
Masculinity.
I think he has to give his
Oh.
white guy card back.
Can't they back
Your
up?
whole
Back up.
identification.
Yeah, about that, I kept turning to my wife and going, why doesn't this dick just grow up?
Mm.
It's just
Well,
like,
that's-
take responsibility for your life, you
Okay.
moron.
It's the first time you've seen it, so did you pick up? When did you make the realization?
Oh, I knew it already. So.
Oh, you knew it already?
Yeah,
A friend told you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I heard it from a friend.
Oh,
who
that's-
heard it from a
Who
friend.
ruined the Sixth Sense for you?
Right,
too?
yes.
Great.
So anyway,
Took you to the crying game and said, look.
He's gonna
he has peepers.
He's gonna take.
So anyway, but as far as famous, I always thought the line was: first rule of Fight Club, don't talk about Fight Club. Second rule of Fight Club, don't talk about Fight Club. Third rule of Fight Club, don't talk about Fight Club. But there are real fucking rules after that.
Yeah.
Yes, first rule, don't talk about. Second rule, don't talk about. Third rule, if someone taps out, you gotta let them tap out.
Yeah.
Fourth rule, don't pound someone's face. I forget all the rules.
Yeah.
But there was
Right.
like 6 or 7 rules. I was like, oh.
It's a lot to remember.
It
Even
is a lot to
toxic
remember.
men do have boundaries.
Exactly.
Very true.
That's
You never get this film made. I mean, obviously the biggest one would be dropping a bunch of buildings in Manhattan or wherever, because this is all pre-September.
Right,
Oh, yeah.
right.
The film is so devoid of, I don't want to say femininity, of female involvement that I just don't think any executive, and I'm not even talking about Me Too movement, I'm just saying that right now there's that sort of
There's
overly
awareness.
masculine appeal.
That time is over.
It is. And
That
that's
time is
what dates that film more than anything. It's just the way these guys are out there.
pass the Bechdel test.
It's that Gen X sort of just.
There aren't even two women speaking to
No,
each
there
other.
aren't.
No, there's not.
They're the only other female I can remember is the cancer victim that wants to have sex.
Right, we'll get to
Like
that. And
a
the woman who
skeleton.
runs that meeting, yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's funny though, because for me, my not problem with the movie, but when I first saw it and when I rewatched it as well 2 weeks ago, I felt like it was a book on tape for a while there.
Oh, yeah.
If you think about it, the first 30 minutes is just Ed Norton.
Yeah.
Just
Narration, and I'm like, oh my god, I forgot how much fucking narration
Yeah.
there is to this goddamn movie.
This is your life, and it's ending 1 minute at a time.
And then it just felt like I'm like I could just read the novel at this point. And then part of me was just like, how does this, as a producer or a team making a movie like this, when do you show don't tell?
Sure.
Because there's a shit ton of telling going on for so long, and then all the showing happens.
I think they cleverly edited it so that it felt like there was more happening than there was more
David
showing
Fincher
than
did.
telling.
Yeah, like he
They-
really tried to.
Yeah,
Visually
not
make
that
that
it didn't
part
work.
appealing. Yeah, no, I think you're right. I didn't notice it. And you're absolutely right. That it's like just Ed Norton reading a book.
Can I answer you guys? Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I can't quite remember exactly what my reaction was 20 years ago, but when I rewatched it this time, and maybe this is sad commentary on myself, but when I watched it, the part where it fell apart for me is that I believe that Brad Pitt is charismatic enough to have been the leader of this movement and to be like, yes, sir. Oh, we got you, like all that stuff. Where if you then rethink of it all, the storyline, if you're then going, oh, but it was all Ed Norton the entire time. I'm like,
No, they'd be like, whatever, punk.
Yeah. And I was like, does he have a split personality, or does he just shift? And it's
Yes,
master
I
of
do.
disguise.
I believe that he does shift. Like I believe that he must take on that. He must completely,
Yeah, I
fully
agree.
inhabit the body or the attitude of Brad Pitt.
Can I ask you,
Tyler Durden.
can I ask you guys a question about the
honestly,
vibe?
it's the abs though.
Yeah, how do you do
Those
that?
are
Makes you fall.
hypnotic abs.
But I'm sounding
but
ridiculous,
what-
but I'm also totally serious.
but
Like when
what-
someone's that beautiful, the world just goes, oh, okay, yes.
Whatever
Like
you want.
But
Yeah.
what makes that also falls into that is that if Ed Norton's character had stayed that way the whole time as the shy wallflower guy, but he doesn't, he starts advancing toward being
right,
an equal with
Yes,
Brad Pitt,
yes.
right? And he starts becoming the badass at the office and all that stuff.
right.
And it's so funny too, because in 1998, I had a job at Warner Brothers, and it was my very first on-air job. And there was this guy, I won't use his name, but he was in production, and he and I didn't always get along. And he was an older man, meaning I was 28 and he was like 40 something. But he came over and he was yelling at me, and the door was shut. And the whole time he's yelling at me, there was this rack of CDs behind me, and he's yelling, and I keep thinking to myself, I swear to God, Steve, throw yourself backwards right now into these CDs. The door is shut. And then go.
Everybody would.
Everybody would think, and I started to think, and then I'm like, whoa, I'm crazy, right? And then I see this movie when he beats the shit out of himself in the
Yeah,
office,
yeah.
and that's 1 year later, I'm like, oh my God,
I
oh my God,
done that.
I need to start making soap. I need to start making soap.
Selling, what is it, women's fat back to them.
Oh,
Right.
Can I ask a question about the violence? Because so much has happened in 20 years. And I think that's one of the things I really remark in some of these films is what is my tolerance for on-screen content. And having seen The Walking Dead, I could probably watch anything now, and same with Game of Thrones. But I still cringe when he's beating the shit out of Jared Leto. The audio of that scene.
Yeah.
And I know they edited it down.
Good part.
They edited it down
the
because...
shit out of Jared Leto.
Right. But all of the violence, because when you watch that film, I do think a little bit like, well, I've never been in a fight like that. And I do project myself as I did when I saw it. Like, I was the same age as all those characters when that movie came out. So that easily could have been me in the Ed Norton role.
I am Jack's wasted life.
But seriously, getting the punching.
Or Meatloaf.
And
I would say I think the violence is more disturbing in this than Game of Thrones or Walking Dead, just because it's more realistic. Like you could see yourself in that fight.
But it's not just that. It's because in Game of Thrones you're fighting a dragon and you're
exactly.
with a sword in a basement. Like,
well, they're showing up to work the next day, bloody and bruised, and you could imagine a coworker showing up going, "Holy crap!"
If someone walked in like that, we would all do an intervention to help them.
Yeah.
Call HR and do you need me to call the police?
Blink twice if you want help.
Well, I mean, it's almost like, I don't want to go on too long about it, but I do think that this with the Matrix, they kind of deal with I'm thinking about what it said about us as a culture at the time. Obviously we're talking about white masculinity and what that meant at the time, and then the violence of it, being a teenager at the time, it was difficult to escape the comparison, or I'm sorry, not the comparison, but difficult to escape the conversation having to deal with violence in general and how it was affecting kids, because at that time Columbine had happened and people were really sensitive. I remember it was we gotta not have kids watch The Matrix anymore because that will
Trenchcoat Mafia.
Right. And Fight Club is they're gonna blow up buildings because they're mad, or they're fighting each other and that kind of thing. So it was it was weird. It was a weird place. You had mentioned September 11th, but there was still that weird, scary place before it.
It basically was R-rated Office Space, because if you think about it, which came out. Because that film ends with a big torch to a building, too.
American Beauty should be next.
Really?
Because that's also about white masculinity.
And has the same scene where the character basically tells the boss,
"What do you want? 1 year's salary with benefits." That's not going to happen. Well, what do you say I throw in a little sexual harassment charge to boot?
So what I'm sensing here is that the years preceding 1999 were fraught with questions amongst men about what they mean anymore and what's going on. And I really don't know how to speak to that. At the time, I was an underage black girl, so I don't know what was going on with
I was a gay guy and still am, and I had no problem with it. I got no anger in me. I used to look at angry white males and just go, "Oh, Jesus."
Well,
Kiss already.
American Beauty, is it one of the first films to really explore repressed homosexuality in suburbia?
It feels like one of the first mainstream films.
It won Best Picture.
Yeah, that's true. I agree with you. It's probably the first mainstream. I'm sure there were others, but yeah,
but certainly that were lauded so much. And
well, I knew a guy that was
Cry
just
Gang.
who's the kid, the brooding kid who's the boyfriend of
Wes
Thor.
Bentley.
I knew a guy like Wes Bentley. He was just like that, had that same kind of dynamic with his dad. But Wes Bentley, as messed up as you think he is, seems to be the only one that has his shit together. He's got it all dialed in. He's got money saved from his drug dealing. He's going to go to New York, and and he invites her along. And
Well,
He
he
sees
has
the beauty of a
clarity.
paper bag floating in the wind.
A plastic bag.
A plastic.
He's got a good eye for art.
But I think there's something about being the victim so long under the thumb of his dad that gave him such clarity, because he had, I think at that age, freedom when you graduate, if you're in a bad home situation, that just feels like the light at the end of the tunnel. If I can just get to that place. And I think that's where he was. He was saving his money. As soon as he could graduate and get out that door, he would never come back.
For me, American Beauty and Fight Club have a lot of things in common as with The Matrix. You have three somewhat repressed white males. All of them are narrated at the beginning.
They're
and,
like men in the gray suit kind of situation.
yeah,
where
and
jobs
also
are made.
there's a face value to things, and then there's what's really going on behind the beautiful door. And then also it's really cool, in American Beauty and Fight Club both end almost the same way. To get them out of their misery, they both take a bullet to the head.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like this says a lot about me, considering that I like first tossed up these movies. But I just want to say, I did toss up like 6 or 7 or 8.
We could be talking Star Wars.
We could be talking American Pie.
Oh, I'm so glad we're not.
Right.
I do too.
The one thing I felt American Beauty was missing was a talking cat for little Thora Birch. You know, this little wink to Hocus Pocus. She couldn't have killed it. She could have put on like a Bette Midler song and wink at the
That's true.
camera.
That's
You know,
what
the
I
film
said.
is hard to watch now because, like other films, particularly LA Confidential, it makes me very sad about what happened with Kevin Spacey.
Yeah.
Because he was so good in that movie.
Yeah.
And that film was originally supposed to be a
American
vehicle
Beauty?
for Chevy Chase.
Yeah.
No
Ew,
way.
really?
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that
And
feels like a ball.
I look at him, and I am now older than his character was in that film, but there are some similarities,
Right.
and it's heartbreaking because I don't know how if I can not be colored in his performance by the fact that this guy is now he was the toast of the town. He won the Oscar,
Yeah.
and then 20 years later he is the utter opposite of that, and yet, you know, can I divorce myself? I guess this happens with a lot of people, whether it's Mel Gibson or other people that we really
Tom
respect.
Cruise.
You find something one day, and it seems like in the last 2 years, it's just these hammers drop more so than they ever did, probably because of social media.
It's not hammers dropping, it's our eyes opening.
Yes, that's a good
Yes,
way.
and let's not forget, if we're really talking about American Beauty, you're watching Kevin Spacey macking on an underage girl.
Oh,
Yeah, it was
yes.
gross.
Yeah.
So
It was
Yes.
gross.
flip
Yes.
the switch a little bit.
Even in the fantasy parts were gross, and
Yeah.
the rosebud coming out of his mouth, and just
But-
yeah, I mean, so you can never watch that movie.
No, you know what ruins it for me is he's in the car with his wife, and she's telling him like, well, we've got to go to the cheerleading event. And he's like, as long as we're home in time for the Bond Marathon on WBS or whatever. And I was like,
too close for John.
So
Yeah.
you can't watch this movie.
well, you know,
For other
it
reasons.
is still a funny movie though. I mean, is
And Annette Bening is still such a goddess. She's
No,
so
she's great.
so
in it.
amazing,
Yes.
so amazing in the realtor scene when she cleans the whole place.
Yes. Oh.
And
With her mantras. And
Oh,
Yes.
all
And when
of
she's
it.
crying against the curtain.
yes, when she's across the window. But I love when she's with the squeegee and the crazy look.
and remember the couch?
Lester, you're going to spill beer on the couch.
So what? It's just a couch.
This is a $4,000 sofa upholstered in Italian silk. This is not just a couch.
It's just a couch! This isn't life!
Everything about her character was summed up there. Their marriage was summed up in that moment.
Because it was based on an image and the reality versus the image, and she couldn't let go of the image long enough to experience a reality.
Oh, it's like the Matrix.
Could you remake that film with the genders reversed, where the woman has the midlife crisis? Or
Well, yeah.
is
but
that just
I
something
think so,
endemic
yeah,
to
for sure.
heterosexual males?
No. I just think we weren't really able to tell those stories until recently. I
It's
just
called
think nobody
Bridesmaids.
gave a shit.
Right.
Yeah.
You know?
Bridesmaids.
Innocent, yeah, but totally.
Wait, women?
No, I meant, could you tell that same
No,
story
no.
now with the characters reversed?
I
don't
would
know.
like to. I'm just
I
going to throw
don't-
it out there. If anybody's interested, I would like to make that film.
Awesome.
So you would play Lester?
I would change that name.
Wait, Hester?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Oh.
Does Lester deserve our sympathy?
Well,
For dying?
No, well, that
For
sets
feeling-
him on this path to
yeah, for feeling trapped,
for feeling trapped, for
I would have zero sympathy today.
Oh, and see, I'm the opposite. I have total compassion for every single character in that film. I think they're
Okay.
all responsible for their own bullshit, but I have compassion for what they're feeling.
Well, and like Chris Cooper, who was so amazing to play this horrible father, and then you get this sort of right turn with where maybe his anger, and you
Right.
start to think about what was his dad like to him.
By the way, just that scene where he's watching his son and Lester. What's the actor's name?
Wes Bentley?
No, Kevin Spacey. I just
You
kept
forgot him
blanking.
already.
You
Yeah.
spacey'd his
I
last
spaced
name.
it out his name. Anyway, that scene is so felt so over the top to me. It's just like, I'm gonna roll up this, what is that
But
called?
that's because
A
he's
joint.
a victim.
And then look like I'm blowing you.
But he's a victim to his own, to what the father is his
Of his
he's a-
own
yeah,
fear
exactly.
and his
Yeah.
own
So
his
to
own
me, even
obsession.
though it's kind of
His mind
comic, to
constantly
me
goes
that just makes it more sad because
Yes.
it's clear,
Yes.
like he sees what he wants to see, even though he's seeing his own nightmare. Like,
Well, I
it's-
think that's a good point.
Well, and he's egged on with this happy gay couple, these
Right,
these
right.
these affluent professionals who come by with a gift basket, welcome to the neighborhood, and he's seeing this life that he could have had
Sure.
if he was raised or born in a
I
different
mean,
time.
think of how
It's just
miserable
rubbed.
their
It's just
household
rubbed in
is.
his face.
Yeah.
See, I would
Poor
love,
choice of words, John.
I would love to refilm it, but from the gay guy's perspective.
Oh, I love it.
And across the street, because they sort of drop out of the film. It would be great from the gay guy's perspective, and they're just totally standing there on their like treadmills, and they're like, "Oh my god, are you watching what's happening across the street right now? Holy shit!" Because I can see that guy's watching that guy over there through the window. Like,
Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead. It would be like the neighbors in American
I love
Beauty.
it.
That's a great idea for even a short film.
Oh,
flip it.
Yeah.
I love that.
Well, the film, what did it beat out for Best Picture? I don't remember, but it was a big.
The Matrix.
For
Blair
best
Witch
picture,
Project. Fight Club.
Sam
I think
Mendes
Fight
won.
Club was up.
I think Gone with the Wind was up that year. And
Wizard of Oz.
Wizard of Oz.
I can't
and,
remember a
Rear
single
Window.
nominated
Yeah.
film from '99. It's weird.
The
Exactly.
Rear Window, they were really angry about because of all the window deals.
Now, Stephanie, you were in. Did you see this?
I did. I saw it at the theater.
What was that like?
That was okay. So, granted, I was 17 and I could get into the movie, so there was no issue with that. But like, I was still a child, so watching this movie, I was like, "Oh, this is what life is about." And I grew up in suburbia, just like this place, so it wasn't like I could contrast it with like, oh, my life's not like this. No, my life is like the people I grew up with. There could be like this, and I kind of was like, well. It was kind of interesting to me. My friend and I, we were like, Kevin Spacey, we loved Kevin Spacey. When we went to go see this movie, we were like, oh, we love him, and we did feel sympathy for him, and we thought he was so dreamy in some scenes, that kind of thing. I think that I took it at face value, and I was like, yeah, this is a sad tragedy about people. And now that I'm older, I'm like, no, this is a very specific story about very specific people who had very specific complaints about their wonderful lives. And it was made up, like it just felt very like now today, I probably couldn't watch this movie without being like, eyes rolling out of head,
Well, everybody gets a moment where they're yelled at for being selfish, and yet it doesn't really sink into anybody. For instance, Thora Birch gets the speech from her mom, like, "You don't realize how good you have it. I grew up in a condo," and the daughter's like, "Yeah," and so it's interesting that everybody has a moment to reflect on their selfishness or whatever, and the only thing that maybe rocks them out of it is the end. The rest of the film we don't get to see, which is the aftermath.
Right.
Does Chris Cooper get arrested?
But interestingly, in what you're talking about is that I think that again, going back to it, is that like Fight Club, is that there is the image that is put forth by a community. And I live in a fancy house and I drive the fancy car and my kid is on a cheerleader. You know what I mean? Even though the kid's miserable being a cheerleader, right? Thora Birch is miserable, you can tell.
Right.
But they're the perfect family and they all sit at dinner. Like when he says, "Can someone please pass is it asparagus? I was going to go, "Can someone please," and then he picks it up and just throws it at the wall. But that is like the greatest. There was a Saturday Night Live skit like a long time ago. It's Will Ferrell. I can't remember who else is in the skit.
This is Cherry O'Terry. Is that the one where he's like, "I'm going to take my belt off. I'm going to take. Come on, bud."
Drew Barrymore. Drew Barrymore is the daughter playing. She was the host, and they literally do that scene, but they just scream at each other, and they're just screaming at the top of their lungs at each other, and then he always ends it with something where he's like, "I drive a Honda Accord," and then they all just see each other. "How was your day?" "Oh, it was good," and then they all start screaming. But for me, it's that suburbia and middle America are this close to becoming a war zone.
Yes, and I think
they're a hair away, you know what I mean, from just losing their shit.
The film is about assumptions. and the assumptions people have about the veneer of people's lives. And no better place to peel the onion of that is in suburbia, where everybody seems to have everything dialed in. And I think that, I don't know if American Beauty deserves the credit for it, but it's interesting how much came after it in the 20 years. I think you could probably do a through line to Desperate Housewives and a lot of sort of the TV shows that show the underbelly of what is happy. Steph, one of the films nominated was Magnolia, which was another film that explored just sort of assumptions of people's veneer.
Magnolia,
And
I thought Magnolia came out in 2000.
99.
I saw it in college.
Came out in 99. It was nominated in 99.
Oh my god.
Maybe you saw it on VHS.
Can we not talk about Magnolia?
Did you see it recently? Or,
Yes.
Okay,
I'm
so
down.
how did it...
I've never seen it.
How did it hold up as a film that's aged 20 years?
There were certainly things that don't ring well to me now, particularly Kevin Spacey stuff. But generally speaking, I still love that film because I feel like it's something that every year our culture gets better at understanding, which is the exploration of happiness and the difference between gathering things versus finding happiness in deeper ways, like having a healthy relationship versus having the picket fence and the perfect roses. You know what I mean? Like, to me, all of those themes still hold up. And there's like the Kevin Spacey with the young girl thing, just I mean, that grossed me out at the time, but now it like, I'm gonna hurl
this is bad.
Yeah, like super, super bad. Annette Bening, I couldn't have loved her more. I just always love her in everything. You know who really, because I had forgotten she was in it, even though of course I knew it, but the Allison Janney thing.
Oh my god! I forgot I wanted to talk about this.
Yes, do it.
The crazy thing about Allison Janney in this, it's almost like time went backwards.
Yeah, she looks so old.
She looks so fucking old.
Yeah.
And weathered, even though she's clearly like 30s.
Yeah, but I think that, but
she's a known
that's how
vampire.
unhappy.
her scenes were all at night.
Yeah.
I will give you that.
So is that a segue to horror films?
Yeah, let's make it that.
So, the Blair Witch Project.
Do you believe the occult may be involved in the disappearance of your son?
I'm so scared.
Woo! That's another influential movie. So many movies have been launched. There were 2 movies that were horror movies that are found footage movies. This one and Cannibal Holocaust from 1980. And it took a whole 19 years for this one to show up. And then after that, we've had a bunch of found footage movies in the horror genre.
Like all horror movies.
That's like 50%.
I think what makes this movie is not so much the found footage aspect of it, but it was riding the wave of the new technology of the internet.
It was the first film to promote itself fully on the internet, to use the internet as their promotion.
I remember I followed this film so closely because I was enthralled with the mythology. I just thought it was I was like, is this real? Is this Memorex? What's going on here? And I would read Ain't It Cool News, which covered it almost daily, and then all the little clips they released online were fascinating to me. And then I saw the movie, and I was like, well, I'm out.
Oh, really? Were you a car sick person?
No, I was a bored person.
Aww.
It didn't have any of the mythology. It just had these people wandering around in the woods.
Thank you. I actually saw this on a first date that apparently wasn't a date. Long story short, I dated a gay man for, I'd say almost 6 months. I thought we were in a relationship. Turns out, John, we weren't.
Oh.
So did you try to call him and you couldn't get a hold of him and it became the Where Bitch Project?
Oh!
Well played. Turns out his name was Tyler. He sold soap. No.
Sucked the fat out of Annette Benning's ass and sold it back to her.
For Annette Bening. What? It was the first. We had a movie date, and I was like, oh my god, I totally heard about this. I totally want to see this. And he had already seen it, and he was so excited to take me to this movie. He was so excited. And then right before the movie starts, he's like, you don't get nauseous easily, do you? I was like, not really. I had to look down.
No.
so many times.
It was a Dramamine
but like
film.
you, I got so fucking bored with this movie.
Yeah.
And at the end, I was like, who cares? Just show me that. Like, I wish you had started there.
Right.
And then they ran into the woods and something chased you. Oh, Stephanie's not
So,
no.
are you saying it was a little
Correct.
tad overhyped?
I just felt, because it was a movie that to me didn't even have a real script, I felt like it was just an outline of ideas and they pieced it together. And I just, maybe it was just got too much hype for me. And then when I saw it, it just was like, meh.
Did you feel that way, Dave?
Yeah, I felt like it was way too much hype. And at the end, I was like, okay, so the guy's standing in that corner and she's freaking out and the camera falls down. And... Credits. Okay.
You know what was good was the little special they did for Sci-Fi called the Curse of the Blair Witches,
Yes,
like a
yes.
faux documentary
Yes.
piecing the history. That was scary.
Right.
And interesting. Did I just repeat what you said?
No.
I said interesting.
But you were in high school, so did
Okay,
you see
so-
it like on a Friday night with your friends? or-
I just want to point out that you've been in high school a long time tonight.
I have.
I mean, like, how many years was
Almost
that?
every movie.
I was in high school for a great deal of the 70s.
I thought you were just going to say for most of 1999.
I was in high school for most of 1989. It's true. Well, I actually didn't see it in the theater. I actually had to rent it when it came out on VHS, and it was Halloween of 1999. And my friends and I watched it in our dorm, and it was the scariest thing I had seen. Like, because I have a very active imagination, so I'm one of those people, you don't have to show me anything.
You fill in.
Well,
Yeah,
that
I
movie
feel it.
really filled you up good because you don't got to show you nothing.
There was nothing.
There's nothing to be shown.
Oh, there were some sticks and some trees.
Right. I have to tell you the best part. I have to tell you the best part of the movie theater. Speaking of which, we're in a packed movie theater, and it gets to that point, and I swear to God, some like college-age girl just goes, "Oh, those are cute." She's like a little crafter. She's like, "I'm gonna go on these guys."
I thought it was going to be, so the witch has a popsicle in her
She likes popsicles.
they could be Jello pops. You don't know.
The film had the actors as themselves.
Right.
And of course, the first thing everybody does, because they've discovered this new little website their friends tell them about called IMDb, is go look, and they see, okay, Heather, and was that her name? Heather?
Mm-hmm.
So then you go look up the Google webs, which didn't exist, but it was like whatever, InfoSeek or right, GoFetch or whatever. And there wasn't,
Jeeves. I was gonna say
right, and there wasn't a whole lot because, you know, I mean, I'm sure that, not that they can put a lid on these people, but there wasn't a lot on anybody.
No.
And so it was kind of feasible that they were actor or people participants and died.
Yeah.
Right. Well, you know, the thing is,
Right.
I mentioned Cannibal Holocaust before, but it is a good precursor to this because with that film, they actually had the actors sign a contract that said do not appear in public for about, like, I think it was like 9 months or something. Like so that we can keep up the illusion that you were really killed. And I wonder if the Blair Witch folks did the same thing. I really don't know the answer, but
In
it would be
1980, that would be really tricky. Like, you didn't have Uber delivering.
Right.
Like,
And I-
why does it
so
still show up on
early.
TV? Yeah.
It's so different now because, like now, because everything's so immediate with
Yeah.
social media and putting things up and seeing people, and I was out and I saw this person, I took a picture with them, et cetera, et cetera. We're back in 1980 and even 1999, I'd be like, just go home to your parents in Nebraska for 3 weeks. No
Right.
one give a
Or
shit.
just don't be on TV. I mean, don't do any press for it. I think that was really the
Right.
thing. Like,
I
you
think
could go
it's a
home.
sad state that don't be on TV is a difficult thing now.
Right.
I thought what was so brilliant is I remember hearing the sort of hubbub of the film surfacing. I don't know when they started the sort of viral campaign, but it was a AM talk show, and someone called in and said, "Hey, you know, maybe we're off topic, but did anybody hear about this some snuff film that's out there? I think it's pretty disgusting." And it was all these plants, these marketing for what was it, artists and entertainment, that were just calling talk shows, just throw the breadcrumbs.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool.
That is really smart.
Didn't this film ultimately
Blair Witch
make
2,
more than
Witchy.
percentage-wise than Halloween did?
Oh,
But
that
isn't
I
it
don't
still
know.
the most successful
Well, how
independent?
much could their budget have been?
Yeah, well, that was the big thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, their budget was nothing. They didn't even write a script, and they killed the actors that were in it. At the end.
of the
Right,
four
that's true.
films,
Super smart.
which ones hold up absolutely, and which ones?
I would say for me, my vote would be Matrix still holds up because Matrix takes place in an alternate. You could take it as like alternate sci-fi universe. The phones won't really bother me, you know, because it was what it was, and I think that there, you know, the futurism of it and the idea of people banding together against machinery and technology, that's still valid today. You know, now instead of it being the Matrix, it would be Twitter.
The Twitter.
I still find all four of these movies worthy watching, particularly for anyone who's interested in the history of film. I think they are all benchmark films that you can see what has come from them, what has been inspired by them. I lean towards, well, you can tell my favorite just because I love Annette Bening so much. I still lean towards American Beauty, but I also think that's because we're in a time right now that is so ripe with revelations of what's behind closed doors and what is just the fact that people can have more than one thing going on, the fact that you can be an incredible artist but also a total jackass behind the scenes.
Oh,
and
yeah.
We're all really coming to terms with that. And to me, that's just yet another example.
Peeling back the facade.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
What I think is cool about these four films, which you just hit upon, and building off of that, is that they're all original material.
Yeah.
And like that's my problem right now with so many of the films we have. They're based on a book. They're based on, I guess Fight Club was based on a book. I guess I just blew my own butt. No, none of them are a sequel or a superhero movie or a none of them are a franchise. None of them are created with the expectation of making a buck. I mean, obviously everybody hopes to make a buck, but especially in the case of of all these movies, the Blair Witch Project was probably the biggest roll of the dice. I mean, even though wasn't it like $300,000 was total?
It was so cheap.
It was something super cheap. What was it? You know what? I think it was $30,000.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it was $30,000.
Wasn't it?
Yeah, one location.
Yeah.
or two locations.
And just keep going in circles, and we won't know. Shake the camera. But you're taking chances, you know, on originality, which is something that is in so many ways. It's interesting how much television has shifted to being that place where before television was churning out the same detective show, the same shitty, you know, medical drama, the same shitty law show, the same shitty sitcom with this regular audience. And now I can't even keep up with how many things I want to see because everything is an original and unique idea.
I was going to say, of these four ideas, well, first of all, only two of them actually ended up being franchises, but that's only because they became such moneymakers, like right out of the gate.
American Beauty 2 was amazing.
Fight Club 3 was the best of the Fight Clubs.
Fight Clubs. But like also like all four of these could be TV series on Netflix. I mean, like on
yes,
streamer.
Yes.
Like all four of them could be shows, and that's what's so wild about what you said. Like, yeah, we've evolved to the point now where we bring all these things literally into the home, and we don't show them in the theaters.
And all of those films you also mentioned are the directors were at the start of their careers. They weren't. They weren't. I mean, there may have been some other directors nominated that year, but Fincher was the biggest name, and he'd only done 7 and the Alien sequel. He was still.
Well, he did The Game.
Oh right. Also. But again, Sam Mendes.
And the Madonna.
Sam Mendes was a theater
Madonna
director.
Video with Express Yourself.
Oh, Express Yourself.
Whatever happened to the director of Blair Witch or the person behind?
Oh, they died.
Yeah, the witch got them.
Next question.
You said you watched it.
Thanks for joining us on the Cinema Craptaculus journey. This is Stephanie, and ever present with me are
Steve,
Dave,
John,
and an extra special thanks to our special guest star,
Adrienne Wilkinson.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Adrienne, where can people find you on the web?
AdrienneWilkinson.com.
Oh.
And where can they find you in the phone book?
I don't do that.
310-555.
Where can we find you in the Matrix? Which phone booth do we need to go in?
Which pill do you
Well,
take?
it's going to be one of those red ones in London because those are the cutest.
Yes, I was going to say, which of these films would we find you in?
Oh.
If I was brave enough, I'd play Marla because she's so freaking cool.
Ooh.
Over Trinity?
I'm just going to keep that to myself.
I want to be Trinity.
I want to be the Blair Witch.
You are.
Killing people in the woods.
With popsicle sticks.
Get out of my woods.
And building little piles of rocks.
Yes.
I want to be Kevin Spacey.
You are.
You already are, Dave. Sorry.
What about Rich?
So remember, a good film is just as hard to make as a good one. It's just a lot
A
easier.
good film
to
is
make.
not is just as good as hard to make as a good film.
Wait,
A good
what did I say?
podcast is really challenging.
A bad film. Okay, remember, a bad film is just as hard to make as a good one. Just a lot easier to make fun of.
And now to sing us out is Prince's hit, Let's Go Crazy. Wait, what?
I thought 1999.
Oh, yeah, that's the song.
Same.
I thought Red Beret.
It's raspberry.
Red Beret. Red Beret. I love that song.
I was dreaming when I wrote this, so sue me if I'm in the Matrix. I was selling some houses and I got really mad at myself because I didn't.
I'm a very nauseous person because a Blair Witch is chasing me.
You met me at a very strange time in my life.
With your feet on the air.
Thank you once again for listening to another episode of Cinema Craptaculus. If you weren't totally offended, or even if you were, please like us on Facebook, Cinema Craptaculus, and follow us on Twitter at Craptaculus. I believe we are also on YouTube. And to listen to new and previous podcast episodes, go to cinemacraptaculus.com. Or even better, you can download our podcasts from iTunes.